Welcome to Expedient Means with Lin A. Wei on Time Monk Radio. Lin currently resides in China and is the founder and head teacher of Guizhen Philo-Cultural Society. He has extensive experience in Buddhist and Taoist meditation, Qigong, martial arts, and traditional Chinese medicine. To learn more about Lin, please visit his website at www.guizhenhui.net. This program is dedicated to exploring various facets of these teachings with hopes of making the knowledge more widely accessible. Thank you for joining us. All right, Lin, thanks for joining us. I just wanted to maybe do an intro show so people could get familiar with what exactly is meant by the term expedient means. And maybe if we could investigate some of those topics or some of those practices. So that having been said, would you discuss what you mean by expedient means, or what is meant by expedient means?
Okay, well, this is good. Expedient means basically is kind of like the methods that'll take you to the core teachings. Expedient is basically that, and means is the vessel. So we'll say that expedient means is the method or the pre-method that reaches one to the core method. For example, let's just say off the bat, we'll throw in the big picture for in Buddhist cultivation. The Buddha attains his enlightenment and says, okay, everything is, this cultivation is pretty difficult to do. Living beings can't really handle what I got to say, so how am I going to bring it to them? And then basically he sees what people are at the capacity to understand. So instead of bringing out the main idea, he'll put smaller ideas that let people reach the main idea. For another example, we can say, I want to, just for sake of saying, I want to be reborn in Amitabha Buddha's Pure Land. Okay. How do we do that? Well, could cut right to the chase and say, cut out your false thinking. This is how you do it. Sit in meditation. Focus on one single thought. Use all your mind, all your power to do so, and you'll get to your end result. But how can people actually do that? And are people actually going to believe it, that a straight-up direct method is going to take it to them? And they're going to need commentary. They're going to need something that lets them understand, what is this false thinking? What am I cutting through? Why do I need to sit, or why do I need to apply concentration for this specific thing that's already inherent within my nature, this wisdom? So we will make up practices that allow one to develop concentration, develop faith in what they do. And this faith is basically their own ability to progress. So they're believing in their ability to progress. As they see themselves progressing, they'll have more faith in what they're doing. So that's where faith comes in, one's own power. And then we will add a little bit more to it by stating this is the why and the what we're doing. And then you'll get to this specific state or this specific result. And once you get that result, you're able to cut through. So it's kind of like a matter of building up the strength to get to a point where you will not fall back, or you will not go back on the old things you did, which stopped you from reaching where you are at that point. So expedient means is just that. And it entails almost everything. I mean, sipping your cup of tea, coffee, or whatever it is one drinks is an expedient means to understand the I wouldn't say reasoning, but the conditions as to what brought the person to actually be doing that at that specific point.
So,
it can be an awakening in and of itself. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, so basically anything that sort of entails mindfulness would be, I guess, a lesser type of expedient means. So, you see the Zen masters sipping tea and preparing tea, and they're doing it so thoughtfully. That itself can be an expedient means to realization.
Well, right. I mean, the realization comes when the person is ready for it. But seeing a person doing their daily tasks, being very focused in what they're doing, can be seen as a teaching to let one reflect on themselves as to why is this person so quiet and calm? What is in their mind that allows them to be this way? And then they'll question themselves. And at that point, that is an expedient means to attaining a quote-unquote goal for their enlightenment of their inherent wisdom.
I know a lot of people, when they think of expedient means, people that are familiar with the term, they tend to think, power practices. Would you be able to give a couple examples of some of the expedient means that you're talking about?
Okay, we'll take it on a more basic level instead of going right into the power practice expedients. Basically, we're talking about study, erudition, the practice of study, the means of studying something. It could be worldly knowledge. It can be basically a more greater knowledge than worldly knowledge, which is more that inherent wisdom, which is not in the discriminating mind. So you have schooling, you have our work, and if you want to get into specific traditions of practice, you'll have the Buddhist teachings, the Taoist teachings, Hindu teachings, other educational teachings, Hindu teachings, Catholicism, Judaism, Islam. These things are expedients to get to a specific state so one can proceed further on their goals. So those are the basic ones. When we go into power practice now, those expedients, I would say it would be best to have someone or something there that can catch your mind. It's very easy to fall when we're dealing with power. We're dealing with abilities, spiritual abilities, what we will call spiritual abilities, which become more and more common as the mind is much less in the discriminative state.
Yeah.
So,
Sorry, I was just going to say, it seems like so many people, when they get on the path of the power practices, they see the power as the goal rather than just sort of a side effect of the practice.
Yeah, it's kind of like I want to make dinner, and I'll start preparing the food, chopping up the vegetables, preparing whatever else I'm cooking, and then start cooking it, and then when I'm done, I can eat it, and I think that's it. I get full. Well, full is the actual full goal. That's the actual end result of preparing your food and eating, which is a very basic idea of a power practice. Basically, eating is a power practice. It's a very mundane, but it's a very high-level practice because it keeps this body going. So it's kind of pretty good. But when it comes to terms with spiritual powers, when they're looking to practice, when people are looking to practice for abilities and they assume that the ability gets them full, they feel satisfied, and that is their end result. The ability is not the end result. The ability is just what happens due to the application of the things you're using, the tools you're using. What is the real purpose of the spiritual abilities? Well, truthfully, there is no real reason or purpose for any spiritual ability because, one, you got them. If you have them, what are you going to use them for? You're not going to save everybody because that's not going to happen. And there's nothing to save people from unless they're actually asking you for help. And when you have spiritual abilities, really the only true function for them is for your own self. So just getting a spiritual practice, a spiritual ability, is not really a satisfaction. It's a falsity. It's an illusory of satisfaction. When you have wisdom, those spiritual abilities actually have a meaning. And what the meaning is simply what can I use them for when people need help? It's available with wisdom, really. Like this, I got money. I'm just saying. If I have money, okay, I have money. The guy next to me doesn't. So how is me having money making him rich? It doesn't. So the most important practice for a person looking for spiritual abilities basically here in this expedient is, what is this going to do for other people? My eating doesn't make other people full. So me having a spiritual ability doesn't make other people, more spiritual, doesn't make them more safe or more wiser.
Um, it's funny you mentioned that because I know a lot of times I've seen people on, various spiritual forums and they say, no, I'm not looking for powers for my ego or for, my own selfish reasons. I want powers to heal people and powers to do that. But then, sometimes I dig down, I investigate what they're saying, and it's still, I think, at the root of a lot of these people's desire for power, even though they say it's for selfless reasons. A lot of times it seems like, yeah, they want power to heal people, but they want to do it for egoistic reasons still. Like, look at me, I'm a great healer, I'm a great teacher. Um,
Yeah.
but it's still a form of attachment.
When I was growing up I'm still growing up, 32-year-old growing up. When I was much younger, 9, 10 years old, my sisters would take me to these workshops. I've been to them probably about 3 times, and they've been to them much more. There were people who say that they're these spiritual gurus, spiritual people, and they go in with a room full of 15, 20 others looking for guidance. And all they're doing is sitting there doing a guiding meditation or speaking about ideas about the spirit world, astral projection, astral world, that just, when I look at it now, at this point, at my 32-year-old time period, it didn't really do anything. And when I seen it then, what went through my mind was I couldn't tell. I didn't have the language at that time to really state this is a whole lot of fluff, It's just fluffy stuff. It's the good tasting icing on the cake that everyone wants to enjoy, but it's just empty inside. It's just a whole bunch of carbs, and it's going to burn you out. Those people who were leading these workshops, they were just really, some had some idea of what really is going on to a degree, but others, even those people that have some idea, they were, I'm not saying having, some idea or having ability or whatnot, you can't have good clothing, you can't look clean, you can't be rich. It's fine if you are. But it was very much of a face, I am this person, will bring you to a great purity and all that stuff, and this is for all people to accept. The universe is all loving and compassionate and blah. So people bought into it, but it didn't really do much for them, only because the principle, or not the principle, the method wasn't pure. Why? Because it was taught from a person, it was taught by a person who was making loads of money purposely for these things. Cultivation, just because I teach a method to somebody doesn't mean they're going to get enlightened. Doesn't mean they're going to get develop in this lifetime spiritual abilities. Doesn't mean they're going to be able to do the things I've been able to. No, I say I just with the quotes around it. Been able to do or see or come by. I can't guarantee that to any of my students. That's really dependent on their conditions and their mind. So I don't charge anything. That's why I don't personally believe in charging for any of this stuff. So when I was younger, my sister tells me, what is a spiritual ability going to do for other people? I mean, you being able to do certain things doesn't make the world any better. It may give you a feeling of righteousness or satisfaction, but that's the downfall of you. So you should be really careful on what you're doing. And I suggest you don't do it. Or don't even bother seeking. Let it come as it is.
Yeah, not to beat the subject to death, but it brings to mind a video I've recently seen. I don't know if you're familiar with the teacher named Muji.
Nope, not at all.
And he was a very realized being, and this woman went up to him and she started discussing her Kundalini experience, and you could tell she was so proud that the fire had risen up her spine and this and that, and she thought she had some big achievement, and he he quickly set her right, and he said, but that's just a side path. That's not going to bring you any closer to enlightenment. He goes, look around this room. He said, there's tons of yogis here, and they've achieved all these abilities and markers and stuff, but they're still looking for realization. He said, basically just trying to break her attachment from it, because you could tell she was just so attached to this experience that had happened to her.
Yeah, I've encountered students and passerbys that just wanted a little touch of something and feel like they got something else, and they go on their way. that just, oh, I was able to do something, or I felt something, or, my friend was sick, so I did what you said, and I got this little thing, and wow, it's so great. What else you got? Something like that. And I say, but you just got a very basic idea. That's a very basic state. That's going to pass. All these spiritual abilities, they'll pass. They're not going to last forever. The only way they will last forever is if you got substance, and that substance is called wisdom. And that comes by investigating the mind deeply. Wisdom is there. Because no one has more of it or any less of it. Everyone has the same amount, and that amount is no amount. Everyone has it. We just keep chattering in our minds all the time, and we don't see it. So what the expedient of spiritual power practice, or these power practices are for, is developing concentration power. All those abilities come up because that's the method, that's the end result of the method. But the method itself applies the mind, makes the mind apply concentration ability, or concentration, which develops strength in concentration, which once you get a certain point, you bring that concentration inwards, and you're able to see something more powerful than those spiritual abilities. I mean, what can I say? I've heard stories of yogis able to walk through walls. Some yogis were walk around naked on the streets, then put in jail, and then they just, okay, thank you, put me in jail. I got a nice place to stay for the night. In the morning, they walk right out the wall.
That's crazy.
Which I think is amazingly great. It's funny and hilarious, but that's just what happens as a result of their practice. I'm sure some of them have some wisdom, but you got to see, they've been practicing not just this lifetime, for many others, in order for that to be consistent. In order for a power to be consistent, it's going to be lifetimes and lifetimes of practice until that seed is so nourished that the fruit comes right out of it. Like the tree sprouts from it, everything grows from it and whatnot. And if it's nourished properly, it won't die. It won't fade away.
I guess kind of a different slant, but do you think it's necessary for someone to have a teacher? I know one of your practices is intuitive spiritual cultivation, which I think is probably not for everybody. Um, so do you think that it is necessary for someone to have a teacher to use expedient means, or do you think someone could just read a book and start practicing? Or I guess maybe it just depends on the mind of the cultivator.
It does depend on the mind of the cultivator, but I would also put a little star next to that statement and state, though it is dependent upon the mind of the cultivator, it would be arrogant, and it would be an open door for the wrong way if one were to say, I don't need a teacher, I'm just going to go and study this on my own and do it all on my own, and everything will be fine. That would be the open door for more false thinking. It will happen. I've walked that path also when I was a kid, a teenager. We all go through these little stages, and I did too, but thankfully I did have a teacher, and she was my second eldest sister. But she wasn't with me 24/7. I had a question, I gave her a call. She started me up. She introduced me. She was the catalyst in this lifetime. So I would say it does depend on the mind, yet it wouldn't hurt to ask someone who knows for a little bit of it would never hurt, and it doesn't make you less quote unquote wise, or less great, to do so. Even great cultivators of the past needed teachers at one point or another, or many points in their lifetimes past. At some point, you have one of the Buddha's disciples went through 50. Don't direct quote me on this one. My memory is a little gone, but 53 great, good and wise advisors until he attained what he was looking for. 53. So we can go through many teachers in our lifetime and not realize it, or we can be directly aware of it and accept that maybe we just don't know, or maybe we're not just aware.
I know one thing I found when I first started I guess, learning some of the things you were teaching, I found, I had 1,001 questions. And then at one point, I sort of looked at them and I looked at all these questions I had asked, and then I sort of clicked on me. Most of these questions I think I already intuitively knew the answer to before I even asked them. And then, I just asked them, and you basically would confirm what I think I knew intuitively. Now, when I guess it's bizarre because when I asked the question, I don't think I felt that way. But maybe a year down the road, kind of looking at it, it suddenly dawned on me you already know the answer to a lot of these questions you're asking.
Yeah, when I was young and I asked questions like this, my sister would say, "Call me in 2 days." 12 years old. What does this mean? What does that mean? Call me in 2 days. Then tell me what you think it means, and then I'll let you know what it is. And then I would call her in 2 days. Sometimes I'll call her 3 or 4 days, and we would laugh. The first thing on the phone would be laughter for 5 minutes. Literally 2 to 3 minutes or 5 minutes of laughter. Just, hey, what's up? And she'd go, hi, what's up? And all we just do is laugh. Then she goes, so what happened? I said, I forgot. She goes, that means you already got the answer.
That's
And
awesome.
then,
That's
and
great.
she'll ask me the question, and I would give her what, was something I assumed, because it was only an assumption, and then she would either correct me on it or confirm what I had was something good, So you always need a marker, but the marker does not need to be attached to. It doesn't mean you reached something. It just means you hit something. Not reached. Hitting and reach are two different things. Reaching is for grasping. Hitting is, oh my God, what was that? You're driving your car and you hit something. Same thing in cultivation. You hit something in that mind, and it just wakes you up. That's how it works sometimes.
So, I guess would you be able to recommend any expedient practices for the listeners?
Yes, sir. I would say okay, I wouldn't say it's wise to be without a teacher. It is always wise to have someone to guide you. Always look for a good and wise advisor, and one will be there as long as you're sincere about it. But as a general, for those who don't have the access to a teacher, it's all inside of you. It's all inside already, in that inherent wisdom, somewhere in there. We got to awaken to that. The reason why we got to awaken to it because our mind is too busy. And if our mind isn't busy, okay, but we don't have concentration ability, then we're just like what my fifth grade teacher would say, just a lump on a log. That's what she would say. That's what she would say. So yeah, you need some activity in that mind to apply. You need some application. So a good expedient mean would be breathing, focusing on it, and then asking yourself this one question. And don't recite the question. Just contemplate the actual investigation. What does it feel to be investigating that question? That's what you're holding or concentrating on. And the question is, what was my face before I was born? So we're basically eradicating our false thinking. It is a Chan.
I was just going to say that's a Chan question, I believe, right?
And it's safe to say that if you don't have a teacher, you're just going to ask yourself, what do I really look like? And you got to take apart every single word of that question. What do I really look like? What is that, 6 words? What do I really look like? Yes, 6 words. Take them all apart. When you're investigating them, you're investigating what is asking. You're investigating what is this I. You're investigating, is there actually something real? Who's looking? Okay. Every word, you're asking a question and you're investigating it. And that is a very safe thing to do.
So, how long and how deep are people supposed to go with this? I know I've had my own experiences with Chan. When I first started, I sort of thought this is a bad practice because your mind is still there. You're still using the mind, and I thought the goal of meditation was to eradicate mind.
Well, the goal of meditation is to eradicate mind because that's what happens at the end of it. Not at the end. I'm just saying for the sake of the conversation at end, but that is an end result. The mind, I wouldn't say is eradicated. I would say the false thinking of the mind is eradicated or ceased. It's done. That is an end result. What is most important is not the end result. That's inevitable if the practice is done properly, sincerely. What's very important is the actual practice, the progress, or the process in between you starting it until you get your end result.
Focus on the journey, not the destination.
Yes, because if I'm getting on my way, I'm getting on that route, and my destination is California from New York, I'm going to get to California one way or another as long as I'm paying attention to that road. But if I'm daydreaming about California all day long, I'm probably going to hit something. Hit a deer, fall off the cliff, or something like that. So, you can't be focused on, it's more false thinking, daydreaming. You focus on what's going to be instead of what am I doing now. If I focus on what I'm doing now, my end result is just going to happen. If I'm cooking and I decide, oh, I can't wait to eat this. Oh, that food's going to taste so good, and then I just burn up myself with oil. That's terrible. So that's basically what happens. In cultivation, we worry on the end result instead of the process or the journey, and we create more false thinking. So we're defeating our purpose. We call in Chad putting a head on top of a head.
I heard recently, sort of a bit of a segue, but I heard one of the Zen monks in Japan was threatening to release all the answers to the, I don't know if you heard this, but threatening to release all the answers to the Zen cones so that the masters would have to go and create new ones because he thought Zen was getting stale. So I guess that was a big controversy. I don't know if you heard about that.
Not at all, but that's really great. That would be funny.
Yeah, because I guess he thought, all these masters sitting around and they're just repeating the same old questions, the same old cones, and it's becoming dead, in his mind.
Maybe, not to say I can't speak of those masters, but if that's what the man felt, probably he believed that they weren't actually getting anywhere. So to rile things up, okay, well, I'm gonna spill the beans on the whole entire mystery. The mystery is just that they don't know. That's why it's a mystery. Once you know, it's no longer a mystery, right? So I'm gonna throw the mystery right out the window. Everybody will get it. They're probably not gonna get enlightened, but now these monks can't go through those riddles anymore because people are gonna come right back out with those intellectual answers, And then what's gonna happen? Those monks got to go back and do some work. So he probably felt that the stalemate within Chan or Zen was that no one was getting anywhere.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. But then again, is it his right to make that decision? I guess I don't know.
Um,
I
you
know
got to see.
Zen and Chan has a history of teachers doing erratic things to kind of snap people out of it.
Yeah. So who knows? Maybe he is I would say maybe he's a bodhisattva. Maybe he's a Buddha. Maybe he's an arhat, and he turns around and just wants to, spill the soup a little bit, let all the ingredients out, let people know how to make it. There you go. He can just do that just to get people on their toes again. Maybe he doesn't realize that, and he's doing that out of his own inherent intuition, and he just thinks that's the thing he has to do, just to rile things up a bit. Maybe he does it. Who knows? And if he does, so what? It doesn't matter. What matters is what people are going to do and how they're going to see and how they're going to apply.
So when people are practicing Chan, which I guess is the same thing as Zen, just Chan is the Chinese term and Zen is the Japanese term, do they have to sit in a specific posture, or is it, I guess, just eating your soup, can you sit there and think these cones?
You are fighting fire with Dhyana, Chan, or Zen, which is all the same thing, just a different language. You're fighting fire with fire. So you're taking a false thought. I'll quote it again. What was my face before I was born? You're taking this thought, which is a false thought. Why is it false? Because it's a discriminating mind makes it. Or not that makes it, don't quote me on the word make. It's just that thoughts arise and fall, and they're like clouds in the sky. They have no origin. It's just the mad mind. So, fighting fire with fire, using false thoughts to destroy false thoughts, false thinking, basically.
Interesting. I know one of the terms that gets thrown around a lot is monkey mind. Have you ever heard that term?
Yeah, and I thought it clicked with me when I was younger because I was born in the year of the monkey. So I was
Okay.
like, oh, this is so cool. And then I realized what it meant. I said, that's not nice.
Yeah. I know one of my Taoist teachers actually never studied under him directly, but he used to say that our society was infected with mental diarrhea, basically just mental chatter all the time, and he thought, we had to learn to still our mind to cut through that incessant chatter that just basically drives us insane.
Yeah, well, think of this term, monkey mind. Why is it a monkey mind? Well, what does a monkey do? Watch the nature of a monkey, the karmic nature of a monkey. They jump from tree to tree. They're always active. I mean, you don't see a monkey watching TV unless they're domesticated to a degree, or it's a new sight to see, But generally, they're all over the place. If you have a monkey in your house, they're jumping all over the place. That's the mind. If you see this mind, it's basically like this. Your ears, your eyes, your nose, your tongue, and your body, they go after everything, just like the monkey. And the mind itself is the sixth one, okay? Which is, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. It's the sixth, the mind. What does this mean? Monkey mind. Five senses, monkey. Mind, the sixth one. Jumping all over the place, grasping everything you can. More false thinking, more false thinking. That's all it is, more and more and more. So we're putting an end to this monkey mind when you're cultivating by applying your concentration. It's basically what it is. Using the mind of falsity to take another false thing and eradicate itself with it, which is by developing more concentration. Things don't have a way to move your senses. This is kind of like drinking tea after you're meditating, and all of a sudden you spill hot water on your finger, you drop the cup breaks, creates a sound, and all of a sudden you snap into a state and you awaken because your mind was still and something penetrated it.
So, go ahead, carry on.
No, that's basically it, Well, I'll just add one more thing. We're talking about the monkey mind. We want to seize it, not hold it and hold it really tight. Seize it. Make it cease. Stop. And it's not that when you're meditating you have to make all your thoughts stop, because you're not going to. It's just not going to happen. When you're trying to do it, you let it happen on its own by focusing on one thing and one thing only. Whatever that thing is, everything else falls away eventually.
I know some of the other practices for investigating the mind that I've heard discussed before, sometimes implemented myself, would be say you wanted to stop yourself from getting angry. As soon as that feeling starts to arise in your mind, as soon as you sense that it's there, you investigate it and say, where is this coming from? You don't try to stop it actively, or you don't try and fight it. You acknowledge it and try to get to its core. Would you say that would be a type of chant, or would that be a different practice?
Okay, if we're going to talk in terms of a Buddhist practice, every single Buddhist method has a similar core teaching, and that is concentration. You need samadhi. You need some of that samadhi power. You need concentration power, basically. So anything that you're applying that stops, basically, you're angry. And you stop. You can't stop being angry at that point, but you just recognize that you're angry. You stopped playing into the cycle of being angry for that moment. Then you question yourself as to what is making me be this way. What controls me? Why am I not controlling it? And people take control to be wrong. Actually, no. Control to hurt other people is not a nice thing. Control to stop you from creating more false thinking is a very good thing. And that means concentrating. So, yeah, that's a good method.
But I mean, just the fact, sometimes these things are so unconscious to us, and by sometimes, I guess I mean 95, 99% of the time. But just the fact that you recognize it, and that act itself, it's surprising how that can disperse the illusions.
Think of it this way. That is an expedient means. That method is an expedient means to realize that anger is non-existent. But you can't tell someone when they're angry, your anger doesn't exist. It's not real. They're going to go,
Yeah.
crazy. They're going to go, I'm angry. I'll show you what my anger really looks like,
Yeah, it doesn't work. I've tried it. It just actually makes them more angry.
Yeah, it does. Oh, man, it's bad. That's why you need the expedient of recognizing. In anger management, people make killing or financial killing off of anger management classes, but no. What makes you not have anger is when you're not angry anymore. Anything. Anger management just keeps the anger there. But when you recognize it and you actually work to take it apart and destroy your attachments to whatever has supposedly made you angry and your views about it, and you find the origin of it, by getting down to that point, you would probably get tired of being angry and see there's no point for it at all. Therefore, a certain type of patience arises. And realize this, that when there's no anger, there's no need for patience. There's no need for frustration. So those relative states don't exist in that mind. So a person's truly not angry when not even the subconscious influence creates that anger mind for them.
So, is there a way or a technique or a practice that you could help someone else overcome emotions or false thinking such as anger? I mean, I hate to say this because if they're not ready, I guess is probably pointless. I know myself, I've tried at certain times to hold up a mirror to people so that they could see what's going on in their mind, and it just backfires horribly, and I look terrible and end up feeling terrible at the end of it.
Wow, well, basically, I mean, I'm sure there's billions of methods out there in books and whatnot, but people are still getting angry. Maybe they're not using those methods good or well enough. I don't know. All I can say is that if one really wants to end, just to put it at end of anger, then don't be greedy. Put an end to greed. And you got to put an end to greed, and you got to put an end to being ignorant or thinking false. And those three things are poisons in our world. Greed, anger, ignorance. Yeah, I'm ignorant on billions of things. This is things I just don't know. And it's not bad to be ignorant. It just means you don't know, and that not knowing, as long as you're not greedy and angry about that not knowing, then that's pretty good. But it's not that it's bliss. It just means you just don't know. You have these three poisons. Now, how do we put an end to it? Well, there's a very extensive way to do it, but they are expedient ways. What killed this term tonight? There's expedient ways that can help one to recognize the arisal of these things, these emotions in their body, or basically in their mind, thus in their body. And how do we do that? Very simple. First step is just acknowledge that you have things like this in your mind. You get angry. You get greedy. There's ignorance in there somewhere. Okay, and these things do arise. What am I impatient with? Ask these questions. What do I not like? And then try to investigate, why don't you like them? But this is when you're not angry or when you're not in the states of frustration or whatnot. When you are feeling that anger, what you do? Just not that easy just to say, I recognize I'm angry, because you usually want a result when you're angry. I want it to stop, or I want this to be done, or whatever. That general comes out. I want, or this has to be done, or whatever it is. You just have to let yourself realize that when you're angry, it's all about you. It's all about being selfish, really. The anger person wants to be done with anger, so it does whatever it can to get done with being angry by making whoever supposedly made them angry stop doing what they're doing. The fact is, people can do whatever they want to do. Anger is one's alone. So if someone does something around me and I get angry, that's my problem. I have the anger. Just because they're breaking my windows doesn't make it right when I don't get angry. It just means they're breaking my windows, and me getting angry doesn't make the windows reassemble themselves. Yeah? Go out, sweep up, and go fix the windows, or get those people. And if they don't want to fix the windows for you, do it yourself, because it's not going to get done anyway by anybody else. So anger is really a very selfish thing. So you got to recognize that and put down a lot of ego and put down a lot of attachments when we deal with anger. So it's basically, one, you getting angry? Why? Because I want something, Okay. Recognize it's a want, it's a selfish thing, and then you can take it from there.
I guess one other thing people should be mindful of, just because the means are expedient and meant to speed things up, it's not going to work overnight. Like if you want to eradicate anger, I mean, you've been, most people have had anger welling up in them for, decades, right? So in order to eradicate that, it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take some practice.
Yes, it needs to take practice because you're creating, let's put it this way, put it in the scientific term, you're creating new neurotransmitters. You're creating new things in the brain that help you to recognize and take what you've always took before in a different way. And it takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of
Um,
practice.
okay. Is there any other techniques or any other expedient means you could recommend, or would
Well,
I guess too
just
much?
got,
Maybe that itself, what we've already discussed, is probably
basically,
a good
we can go
start.
into, yeah, we can go into a long discussion on, how we can face these certain emotions, how we can face certain types of feelings and thoughts, and how to, well, eradicate them. Just for the, put quotes around that, eradicate, just for sake of saying it, put an end to them, or understanding that they, where they are, um, and that's a whole big talk in and of itself. But basically, it all starts. How do we develop it? It all starts simply by definitely that age-old word, mindfulness, recognizing and being mindful that you are being this specific way, and then stop it. One is meditating, and all of a sudden they get a false thought. Best advice, well, not the best advice, but an advice that I found pretty good, is stop everything. Stop breathing. Stop breathing, stop focusing, stop everything. When your breath stops, your mind stops, or the thinking process seems to have come to a pause. And then, when you find yourself at a specific quote-unquote ease, you continue again. So it's recognizing, basically.
Unfortunately, I think in our society, people look at some of these practices and they just think, well, it's so simple. It's probably not effective if it's that simple. Maybe I should go open up all my chakras and open my third eye and get insight
Well,
into this. But really, I mean, when it comes down to it, I think the simplest practices are probably the most effective.
I like what you said there. When I was younger, skating through all these, you know, uh, different methods. You mentioned the chakras and eradicating the anger and emotional states and all that through opening up. Let me open up a chakra, and maybe I'll feel better. If your chakra was closed, you'll be dead. It's just the chakra vibrates at a specific level, and that's it. When you vibrate higher, it vibrates higher. It's always open. If it's just closed, say goodbye. But in this term, think of it this way: if I got a pool of water at the top of the mountain, and a pool of water on the bottom of the mountain, and the pool of water on the bottom of the mountain is a little stocked up, meaning the flow from the top, isn't really getting down there. It's trickling very little. And all the pools in between, they also have that same problem. But you got the one on the top, hasn't moved. It's polluted. So all of a sudden, it builds up so much, and I say, let me open up one of my chakras. Let me free one of the pools of water on this mountain. I'm going to open up the second one to the highest. I want to free that one. And then the top water, you're going to free the second one up. There's no water in there, so you got to free the top one. Because, the lower one down there, the second one, is not doing much. It's almost dried up. So you free the top one. And the second one gets flooded with polluted water. And then that overflows, and then so on and so forth. You see what I'm getting at? The rest of the whole pools of water are full of pollution. They're not freeing up. They'll free up later because, it's soil. It'll get sucked up into the ground and filter out and do whatever it does. But in this human body of ours, with these energy centers of ours, where are they going? It's going to be recirculating throughout this body. And all we're going to get is the same mess. Over time, it'll thin out, but we're talking over time, which can be a very long time.
Yeah, I've heard another teacher discussing when he first started practicing qigong. He discussed how within a couple weeks or a couple months, everybody in the class started feeling horrible and they were irritable and angry with one another, and it was because they're freeing up all this energy that had been stagnating in them, and it was just basically making them miserable. But they had to work through that period that everything was horrible, and kind of keep practicing to cleanse everything out. But they thought I'm going to practice qigong, I'm going to be fine, it's going to make everything better, I'll be a better person, and it didn't happen for them right away.
Yeah, that's what happens. When you stir the soup, when you stir the soup, everything gets all over the place. It's just going to be that way over time. It kind of moves out, you know. So I wouldn't suggest opening chakras when one's angry or has that capability. I would suggest finding out why that person is angry or has specific attachments to that state of mind, and then it'll clear out on its own. And then or when you start feeling better about yourself, you can start your other practices.
So basically, just practicing chant or investigating the mind will sort of purify the higher chakras, which hopefully will then, without any effort, filter down to all the lower chakras.
Those things will happen regardless. What I mean regardless is whether you're paying attention to it or not, it's going to happen.
Right.
With clearing up of things. Chan, when you get deep, when I say deep means you go into further study and you start really applying specific methods, to get a little further along the way, it's a little difficult. It's only difficult to the cultivator. It may be difficult to a different cultivator. It may not be difficult to a different cultivator. It's just dependent on the practitioner, really. But taking on basic methods, just to get you jump started in a safe way. Safe, when I say safe, I mean if I were to take, for example, without a teacher, take on the Shurangama Sutra, which is speaks on Chan 100%, but within those teachings, you got a hell of a lot of other teachings in there as well. But the main idea is concentration power. So if you were probably to take on that, and I'll use myself as an example, without a teacher, I would either think it's talking in riddles and doesn't make any sense, and not even bother, and or just read it like it was a book and not pay much attention to it and not get anything out of it whatsoever. Thankfully, there was a teacher there, and I was given good advice. But for anybody else, without a teacher, simply take on some basic practice. Get your mind ready. Nourish the field. You can't just throw a watermelon seed in a piece of dirt and expect it to grow on its own. You got to tend to the soil and get it ready. Then plant the seed and then water it. Take care of it. Then you get yourself a nice fruit. So it's the same thing with any cultivation whatsoever, in any manner, whether it's helping yourself deal with your anger issues or helping yourself deal with other emotional issues or whatnot.
So you said there's other teachings hidden within sutras like the Shurangama Sutra?
Yeah, well, the Shurangama Sutra basically points directly to the mind, right to the mind. I mean, it's just saying, look at yourself. What are you doing? What are you seeing? What sees? What is it that sees? What is it that hears? What is it that tastes, touches? You're going down through, you're breaking down the whole entire, we'll call it this matrix, basically. And within that sutra, you're covering every single thing out there within cultivation. I mean, many people like to say, and I'll go a little off here when they say a Taoist and Buddhist cultivation are totally different. Well, I found in the Shurangama Sutra some teachings in there that are very similar. I mean, so similar, I thought that it was a Taoist cultivator speaking as a bodhisattva in there. Okay? There's these practices that without a teacher or without one who's already awakened, enlightened, who has realized this way, would take one on the wrong path. But that's why you need a teacher. So you don't get taken on the wrong path. But in this sutra, there's Pure Land practice, there's Chan practice in there, there's secret school practice in there. You got, what's the word here? I'll just use this term. A devotional practice in there. We can go on what types of practices and the methods and whatnot for another time, I guess. But the Shurangama Sutra speaks straight up throughout all these things. And without a teacher, that would not really interest somebody unless they had some insight. So basic practice in Chan would be very good. Or just any basic practice of mindfulness is very good. And then it can be as the expedient to get you to the more important practices. Not important, but the practices that'll get you further along your way. That's right.
So, should people investigate? I mean, I'm guessing at different points in people's lives or whatever the quality of their mind is, different practices, different expedients would be more suitable for specific people at specific times. Would it be okay for people to investigate different methods, or is that, I guess the danger in that would be, you're gonna jump all over the place and really just dig a bunch of shallow holes rather than dig a one deep hole.
Well, depends. I would say if a person was just beginning, you gotta get your feet wet. You gotta find what piques your interest, what takes you, and then work on that one thing. You can taste 50 different types of foods and like two of them. And then you'll say, these foods are the greatest foods I've ever tasted. But someone may like the other 48 types of foods, So even in the Sarangama Sutra, they're quoting specific methods of several, 20 plus different bodhisattvas and how they attained their awakening. So each of them had very, very different methods, and each of them said their methods were the greatest. And then the Buddha said, great, and then Mandrashi Bodhisattva turned around and said, all your methods are great as long as you got a teacher who's awakened, who can guide you through all those states and all those expedients and the rest of the way. Because if you don't, you're not getting anywhere with them. So what was the ultimate way of actually attaining the way? Well, they found that throughout the senses, using the body and the mind, the senses, the hearing sense was very much more applicable. Not perfect, 100% the best way ever, but very much more applicable, meaning there's a lot more a percentage of success, basically, when you use the hearing to penetrate and you investigate that method. So they talked very deep on that. So yeah, in the beginning, you want to find out what works for you, and then when you're getting along the way, you start shaving things off, dropping things along the road. For example, I climb a mountain and I go up with 20 pounds of food, and I got to climb a 1,500 foot. No, I don't know how to measure mountains really. I climbed a mountain before, and along the way, I was eating my food, and the garbage I put in a garbage pail and left it along. I left it there where I left it and kept going. I don't want to carry everything with me that I started with, because it just makes the trip heavier. And then on the way down, all that weight is going to push me on the way down, and I'm going to trip. I'm going to fall even harder. So in cultivation practice and anything, you see what you like, you see what fits with you, and then you start working with a few of them. Along the way, you got to throw some of them aside, leave them a little bit aside. Practices that I've learned when I was a child and then in my teens, I don't need to do anymore. I don't need them. They're not that they're useless to me. They just they're still in me. They're still there in the mind, and they come around once in a while, these practices, but it's not something that one needs to do all the times. It's not necessary anymore. So you leave them alone. You leave them for somebody else to take. You teach the next person.
It's like that saying, rowing the boat across the lake. Then, when you're on the other side, you don't get to carry the rowboat around everywhere with you.
There you go.
Go ahead.
When I was younger, I had a bicycle. Obviously, many people did. Let's go bike riding with my father, and my air in one of the tires, or both of the tires, was extremely low. And, we were riding our bikes to the gas station to fill up the tubes. My father was riding his bike, and I decided I want to get off my bike, and I want to carry it to the gas station. And he looked at me, and he said, I'm going to just say it, he said, what, are you stupid? Your bike has wheels, and there's enough air in there that you can sit on it and ride to the gas station faster. And I said, but I'm afraid that my weight is going to bend the rims, and I won't be able to use the bike at all. And then he started laughing again. And he said, sure, that's good. But understand that you already rode your bike probably about half a mile to this point, already on the same air in the tires. And obviously nothing went wrong. So You're carrying your burden. Why don't you steer where you want your burden to go, and basically said something to that effect. Uh, so it's basically just like that. You get to the other shore, you don't start carrying your stuff around with you. You leave it alone. You don't make it.
This might be a superficial saying, but I've heard some people say the teaching itself is really not the most important thing. The most important thing is just to practice. Pick a method, any method, and practice it diligently.
Pick a wholesome method and practice it with all your heart. That's important. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we can probably wrap it up. Is there anything you wanted to leave our listeners with, Lynn?
Well, yeah. This discussion was very good. We touched on well, the expedient of mindfulness and a lot of things that it entails. Just for a short time, understand that it goes much more farther. And just in the beginning, the method may look so petty. It may look so ridiculous. But understand, without that as a catalyst, there's not going to be much strength to grasp everything else. As I was asked before by someone, they asked me, why don't you give me one of the most profound things you can say about the Buddha's teachings? And I looked at her and I said, well, if I give you the most profound, and she was on a TV show, and I said, I give the most profound to everybody, how are they going to get it? They can't even get the most simplest idea. Okay, not just of Buddhism, but just of a basic, I hate to say it, it's just like common sense. Okay, I'll give you the most profound I could think of. Be a good person, be humane. I mean, people can't get a hold of that. They're not going to get a hold of anything else. That's much more, to them it's profound, but once they know, it's really simple. It all comes back to just being nice. Being nice entails being mindful of what you're doing so you don't cause other people to be upset with themselves and with you and with the world around them. You cause more false thinking, well, more false thinking just begets more false thinking. So it's mindfulness, and basically pay attention to what you do, correct what you don't like, and reflect what other people don't like about you. Reflect in yourself. Find, is that true? Turn that mirror on yourself. When people say, oh, you're so annoying, or oh, you're so this, you're so that, well, find out. Don't get angry at them. Just, laugh about it. Okay, great. And then go home and find out, is it true? Am I like this? And if you can't find out, then obviously it may not be your problem. So you always want to check. And also take this advice. When someone compliments you, take it as a curse. And when someone curses you, take it as a compliment. Someone says, you're no good. You smile and say, oh, thank you so much. When someone says, you're so great, don't put it in your heart. Don't take it in your heart and say, wow, I'm such a great person. This person is a really nice person. They like me. Oh, I'm so great that this person likes me too. Don't do it, because you just create more false thinking. That's about it for this one.
That's very profound. Well, thanks for your time, Lynn. I really enjoyed it, and hopefully we'll continue these conversations in the future.
Thank you very much. There's always so much more to go into with expedient means, and that topic basically covers anything in this world. Anything in this world can be used for it. So, we have a lot to cover.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Expedient Means with Lin A. Wei on Time Monk Radio. Please tune in next week for a discussion on Chan Buddhism. To quote the final chapter of the Tao Te Ching, the sage does not accumulate. The more he assists others, the more he possesses. The more he gives to others, the more he gains.
Thank you for coming. Good night.
Stop that. Stop that.